This is Locker Room Rewind, brought to you by Chunky Gnomes Insurance. Here's Ryan Reynolds and Jaydon Hart.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Locker Room Rewind, powered by Chunky Gnomes Insurance. Access to over 20 insurance companies to give you the best value. Located at 1121 South Abe Street, San Angelo, Texas. www.chunkygnomes.com. Get insured today. It's September 19th, week 4 of the high school football season in the books. I'm Ryan Reynolds. Yes, I'm a talking head today. I accidentally wore green with the green screen, so I promise I'm not some kind of wizard. But
I just now noticed that, actually.
I'm Ryan Reynolds alongside the actual wizard of high school football, Jaydon Hart. Also joining the show today, Grape Creek Head Football Coach Tanner Thiel, the real deal, as we like to say. Coach, thank you so much for coming on today. It's always good talking to you.
Hey, I appreciate it, Ryan. Jaydon, thanks for having me on. It's an honor. I'm excited. Never done a show like this before, so let's keep the expectation levels low.
Hey, the expectation's always low when I'm involved with anything. Like, let's be real.
Maybe let's keep the questions to multiple choice, maybe some true false, and we'll be all right.
So week 4 of the high school football is not a thing anymore. It's a thing of the past. But, of course, left some lasting impacts. Jaydon, I always like to ask you this question to kind of start off the show because you're extremely in tune with kind of what's going on around here in the Concho Valley. Some of your thoughts. Pretty crazy week 4.
I'd say my big – I guess if I were going to give like a surprise of the week or anything like that, I really thought Lakeview was going to beat Snyder. I thought that Lakeview would probably end up beating them by 2 touchdowns, but – like we talked about kind of in our preview cast, I wrote about it this week, was that Lakeview would have to stop the run, and Snyder ended up gaining about 200-something yards on Lakeview, and that really hurt them. And you know, Lakeview's offense normally being what it is, they still threw for 300 yards, but not converting on 4th downs killed them. They had a drive. I think they drove 99 yards and ended up getting stopped on the 1-yard line. So, you know, I was disappointed in Lakeview. I thought that was a winnable game for them. And then, obviously, Borden County and Sterling City last night, and Sterling City wins that game. They were up 20 points at one point, and then Borden County rattles off a bunch of points, comes back, has the lead, and then Sterling scores with 30 seconds left. And huge win for Sterling City. So I know we're going to get to that and stuff, but
yeah,
kind of my thoughts.
We'll go ahead and touch on those 2 games a little later in the program. A couple other final scores from week 4. Reagan County beating TLCA 61-0. Alpine over Sonora 7-0. Brady picking up the win 38-24 over Dublin. And Wink beating El Dorado 61-46. But one of those final results from week 4 was your team, Coach, Grape Creek, falling to Coleman 24-8. This was a good Coleman team. They're now 3-1. Your team falling to 1-3. Put us in the coach's hat, Coach Thiel. What kind of happened there?
Well, you're exactly right. Coleman, they're a good team. I mean, that's the reason we scheduled them is we know Coach Elder is always going to put a good Blue Cat team on the field, and they're big and they're physical, and that's kind of something we wanted to see before we started district play. And so we knew what to expect. First half wise, we came out and defense played a great first half. We held them to 3 points at halftime. Offensively, much like last week, we started slow. We kind of picked it up in the second half, but you know, it was one of those deals to where honestly the score. The game was a lot closer than the score showed. We were, like I said, down 3-0 at halftime. We come out the second half. We muffed the second half kickoff. They recover. They go down and score. So it's 10-0, and then we kind of get a drive going. Some penalties, some holding calls, moves us back. We end up turning the ball over on downs. They score on a quick. Just a deep pass, and we have good coverage. It's just a great throw, a great catch. So it's 17-0, you know, kind of in the blink of an eye. But we kind of weathered the storm, drove down, we scored. We made it 17-8 at the beginning of the fourth quarter. And, you know, it's just kind of one of those deals. They drove down and scored to make it 24-8 with about a minute left. And we were driving. We got it down to about the 25 when time ran out. So it's just kind of one of those deals to where, you know, offensively, if we don't sputter in the first half, we're right there in the ball game.
Well, y'all are 1-3, but it really has been just it's a 1-3 that, you know, a couple of things we talked beforehand about just kind of the little things and how all the little things add up. But, you know, defensively, you guys have looked really good. You said just trailing by 3 going in the half last week. You know, TLCA, that was the win you guys had. But Stanton, you guys right in there. Cristobal, a team who no doubt has talent and should be a threat into a Division II. You know, you guys hung in with them, had the lead going in the fourth quarter, and then, you know, only lose by 5. Right. So, you know, while y'all are 1-3, it seems like this is a much improved football team than what you guys were last year.
Without a doubt, and that's kind of, you know, there's been some silver linings to every game. You know, even though, you know, we talked last night to the kids and we are 1-3, but we don't feel like our record is an indication of how good we are. And like you said, we ball bounces our way here or there. You know, we could be a 3-1, 2-2 football team right now. So, you know, but with all that being said, it is non-district, and told the kids last night these games don't necessarily count. They just prepare us for district play.
And yeah, it is non-district. Next week, the final tune-up before District 2-3A Division II play begins. You guys travel to Early, who is 2-2. What are you kind of looking forward to of this final game of district, and what do you kind of make of this Early team?
Well, to be honest, this is the first time since I've been at Grape Creek we've played Early, so we don't really know a whole lot about Early. Just looking at them on film, they're athletic. They've got some good-looking kids. I mean, they've got some size, they've got some speed. So it's going to be a good test for us. You know, it'll be another thing that, you know, each week we kind of we look back and see where we need to improve, and you know, being a new offense and stuff like that, we've had to move some people around and kind of find the right configuration to be more successful each week. So it's just another one of those to where we're trying to find the right fits and the right spots, and we feel good going into it.
Early favored by 13. Do you tell the kids that to kind of light a fire under them? Does it mean anything?
Oh, absolutely. We do that each week because, you know, naturally, you know, Grape Creek in the past, you know, we've talked traditionally is not a powerhouse of the Concho Valley. You know, we're usually, you know, the underdog, and we accept that role, and it's okay, and it's a motivator for our kids. And just like, you know, we were TLCA's homecoming, we're Early's homecoming, you know, and we tell the kids, you know, there's no better feeling than spoiling somebody's homecoming. You know, nobody likes to get beat on homecoming. So we definitely use that as a motivational factor. Yeah,
some of the funnest teams to watch, too, are the spoilers. I mean, you look at college football. Pitt always seems to be playing spoiler. But no, you guys going to Early next week 5. Taking a look ahead to district, though, you guys, it's a tough district, 2-3A Division II. Ballinger, Bangs, Ingram Moore, all 4-0. What do you think this team needs to improve on, you know, going into district? And what do you just kind of make of this district as a whole?
No, you hit the nail on the head. It's a really good district. It's a challenging district. I mean, from top to bottom, it's a very competitive district. Ballinger, definitely the front runner. Coach Lipsey's got stuff going on at Ballinger. He's got a lot of kids back from a really good team last year. He's got, I mean, a lot of firepower. He's got a really good player in Adam Wynn, both sides of the ball. He's a difference maker. So Ballinger's definitely, you know, the top dog that we're all kind of chasing. And then Coach Maxfield's got Bangs looking really good. So it's one of those things that every Friday night when district rolls around, you're going to have to bring your A game because anybody can beat anybody in this district.
You know, you kind of look at, like, the district, and again, I reference back to stuff that's happened off of the camera, but because we do talk, you know, it's not like we just come in here and sit down and then just, hey, okay, now, like, hey, coach, how are you doing, you know? But, you know, like, seriously, one of the things that I guess through 4 weeks now kind of have a measuring stick, so to speak. Like, Brady played the common opponent with TLCA and then Coleman.
Right.
You know, and they lost that game against Coleman.
Right.
Last week. It was one of those deals where Coleman just comes back.
Right.
And then, you know, you look at Sonora, like they've played 4 good quality opponents.
Right.
And while they're 0-4, it's like, really, what can we make of
exactly
what Sonora is right now? And maybe next week will be kind of the telling test when they play El Dorado.
Right.
And then Ingram Moore's 4-0, but, man, what do we make of the teams that they've played? So I guess from y'all's standpoint, y'all are like right in the mix in my eyes. Like, and I'm assuming that you kind of feel the same way with that.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. We tell the kids each week that, you know, we feel like we're a playoff team, you know, and it's something that we can prove from week to week that we belong right there in the mix with these other guys, and you know, we feel like if we continue to improve, we're going to be playing our best ball when district rolls around, and that's our goal.
What would you say is the biggest difference from last year's team to this year's team?
I would say buy-in. The kids have bought in, and we had even with the COVID stuff this summer, we had a really good summer. You know, the kids, when COVID shut everything off in the spring, the kids were so excited to come back this summer and put in the work. So they were hungry and just ready to play. They were ready to get back on the field and play. So I would say buy-in has been the biggest difference from last year to this year.
You talk about buy-in. One of the things that these kids have to buy into is that new offense that you guys are running on the field, the single wing, something that's not really seen in today's high school football game. It's dated back, popular around the 1950s, 1960s. Right. Just what prompted the switch? Who generated this idea? What were those conversations like?
It was just kind of happened, really. We started my first year as head coach. Grape Creek, before I got here, was running the spread, and so we kind of kept it in the spread, but we ran the option out of it. And then next year we kind of transitioned a little bit to the flex bone, and you know, we figured out really quick that we weren't Wall running the flex bone. You know, we were Grape Creek running the flex bone. And so, you know, just like we are now, each week we would kind of look and see what was working. Well, we started kind of running a heavy package out of that and running quarterback power with Jorge Rodriguez and having a little bit of success. And so my offensive line coach, his name is Randy Tankersley, and he's an ex-high school head football coach. He's been the head football coach at Wink and at Munster. And, you know, we were sitting there talking one night, and he was like, you know, it's basically single wing what we're running out of this. And I said, yeah, you kind of got a point. And so as soon as the season ended last year, we just started researching the single wing. I read probably 4 books, probably none of them published before 1950. I mean, there were some 1940s and, you know, stuff like that, some first editions that I read, and I've watched probably 10 or 11 DVDs on the single wing, and really there aren't many schools in Texas that run the single wing. The videos I were watching were teams from like West Virginia and Ohio and stuff like that, but everything that has to do with the single wing is, you know, do you have, you know, a big offensive line? Well, no, we don't. We're small, so hey, that checks right into the single wing box. Do you have a drop back quarterback? No, we don't. So hey, there's another plus that, you know. So it was just something that kind of fit our kids, and it was something that the past few years we've been looking for an identity, and so it was something that was different that we could call our own, that nobody else runs, and the kids have really bought into that, to the fact that, hey, nobody else runs this. This could be ours. This could be our calling card. So it's been really good as far as from that standpoint. We're still trying to get all the wrinkles worked out and the kids in the right spots. But each week we're kind of moving them around and trying to find that right combination. And so far it's been really good.
The legendary Pop Warner actually making the single wing.
I did not know
the
that.
thing.
How about that?
No, it's actually it's a really fun offense to watch. If you can get out to a Grape Creek game, make sure you go out and watch that single wing at work. You can't see it in week 5 because they are at early.
Yeah,
but
you hit the road.
You can come back, and they host Bangs on October 9th. district opener. You can watch Coach Thiel work his magic, and you can watch that awesome single wing offense. There's still a lot of season left to play, Coach. Like I said, you guys traveling to early September 25th, 7:30 p.m. the kickoff time at Longhorn Stadium. It's such a great time always talking to you, Coach. Just thank you so much for taking your time out of your Saturday and coming on to Locker Room Rewind.
Absolutely, guys. I appreciate it and really enjoyed it. Y'all kept the questions pretty easy. So hey, anytime you need me to come back, more than willing.
And I'll stutter through them, and it's all right. Sometimes the guest ends up sounding a little bit better than the guy that does this professionally. So I've learned that to be the case.
I can barely talk half the time.
Yeah, you should watch me during Inside the Game. I'm just sitting there, gotten these elegant scripts that I've written up all week, and I'm so excited for the story that I'm about to tell before the highlights of a game, and I botched the script and it ends up just being disappointing. So it's a letdown.
You as a coach, you talk to 14, 15, 16-year-old kids all day. It's pretty easy. If you can talk to kids like that, you can talk to just about anybody because they'll believe pretty much anything you say.
It's true.
A skill I need to learn for sure. Coach Thiel, everyone, we're going to take a quick break. We will recap some of the Week 4 games from around the Concho Valley. We're going to take a quick break after this word from our local sponsor. Welcome back, everyone. I'm still a floating head. This is tripping me out.
It's even closer now, too. And the mic's moving on me, so it's all right.
Welcome back, everyone, to Locker Room Rewind. That was Grape Creek head football coach Tanner Thiel. Jaydon, we have some very, very important things to get to. Week 4 of the high school football season in the books. One of those important games, Grape Creek district rival Ballinger. They improve to 4-0. They beat a tough Clyde team 21-14. Ballinger still one of the 4 undefeated teams in the Concho Valley. Ballinger, Sterling City, Erie and County, and Paint Rock, who still sits at 1-0. They're kind of, I guess, getting a pass and floating by.
Yeah, they're getting the free pass
through
right
this
now.
Thing. They're dealing with some COVID-19 related issues. We hope everything is okay and they can get back on the playing field in Paint Rock. But like I said, Ballinger defeating Clyde 21-14. We talked about this game on the Week 3 preview cast. If you guys don't know, we preview these games as well every Wednesday. We knew it was going to be a tough game for Ballinger, and it was. Clyde, they tested the Bearcats. Ballinger, they trailed 14-7 entering the 4th. Junior quarterback Carter Arrett tied the game with a 13-yard touchdown run with just over 9:30 to play. He finished 7 of 14 through the air, 107 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception.
Yeah, I mean, Clyde, it's one of those deals where we really are still trying to figure things out with these teams. And Ballinger, I'm not saying that they haven't scheduled tough opponents, but, you know, Ballinger has snuck away with some games. And they're undefeated, as you mentioned. But it hasn't, other than last week's win over Colorado City, it's not like Ballinger has necessarily been blowing out teams. A large part has been their defense. Their defense has kept them in games. And you know, especially last night against Clyde when you're trailing, the defense came up clutch because you have to get stops. In order to make that comeback, the offense obviously has to score, but the defense has to do its part also and stop the Clyde offense. And, you know, I just think that with Ballinger, yes, they're 4-0, but we're really going to see that true test next week. I'm, you know, it could be, I'm not going to say a rude awakening for Ballinger because they're expected to be a good football team, and so far they've lived up to the expectations of what people thought. They expected them to be 4-0 at this point. But, you know, as far as a talent level, when they play Llano next week, we'll really know something about this Ballinger Bearcats team.
Ballinger getting battle-tested in non-district play. You like to see teams kind of get those type of games under their belt before district play starts. One of the big players for Ballinger, and I think he's honestly a KLST Player of the Week candidate, Garrett Dixon. He scored the game winner on a 13-yard touchdown run with 6:49 to play. His stat line, Player of the Week worthy stat line, 22 carries, 214 yards, and like I mentioned, that game-winning touchdown. Bearcats, Ballinger, they accumulated 386 total yards of offense, and like I said, this Ballinger team, they're getting tested. They were tested in Jim Ned by Jim Ned week 1. They were tested last night against Clyde, and they're certainly going to see a test next week against an undefeated, really tough Llano team.
And as my mic slips down, I'm not trying to take away from anything, and they did play a good Jim Ned team in week 1. So, you know, I did say that some of their games, I did take that away from them. Jim Ned is a good football team. But, you know, they've been battling the injury bug. Tyler Vaughn, who normally would start at quarterback, he still hasn't came back to become the starter. He's playing on defense. He had a nice little interception last night towards the end of the half. I mean, a Clyde quarterback just chunked it up, and Vaughn was there to intercept it pretty easily. But, you know, he's out there playing, and eventually I'm sure they're working him back. But, you know, guys like Carter have stepped up in his shoes. Weston Rolowitz, you know, Garrett has stepped up and played really well for them offensively, because, you know, you lose a guy like Braden Bowman. He was a one out of all of the returners that Ballinger has coming back. You know, that's one of the guys that you hold, you know, up there. He's talked about. And then the guy that might not get as much credit because he's a lineman is Adam Wynn. And, you know, Adam is on that offensive line making sure that Carter has time to throw the ball. And then on the defensive line, he's going in there and causing chaos. And he's a large reason why their defense has been so successful, because he's down there on the line, and he's not just a big dude, a big kid. He can fire off the ball, and he's getting in the backfield and getting after the quarterback. You know, at least the times I've watched, nearly every time he's beating an offensive lineman back there. And so, you know, that's played well in their favor. It'll be interesting to see next week. It's going to be the telltale test.
Absolutely. Ballinger, just a team made up of athletes going against another team that's also made up of athletes. Ballinger hitting the road September 25th. They're taking on Llano, who just knocked off San Saba.
A good team,
A very, very good team. That one at Llano Stadium. Kickoff at 7:30 p.m. Ballinger opening up as 13-point underdogs, but we will stop the preview chat there, and we will talk about that on Wednesday's Week 5 preview episode, transitioning to probably one of the top games in the state last night, especially on the 6-man level. I know Rankin beat Lakey 98-97, which was insane. But how about those Sterling City Eagles? They beat number 2 Borden County. Put some respect on 5th-ranked Sterling City's name, 62-58. They keep their perfect record intact. Borden County falls to 2-2, and this was an exciting one. 8 lead changes, 4 coming in the final 5:30. Jaydon, you were out there.
Yeah, and I didn't get to stay as long as I would have liked to, because right away I could tell this was going to be one of those games. I mean, this is the highlights that we got. And, Cross Knittle throwing it to Damian Calderon for the touchdown. Calling a little highlights for a webcast/podcast. But no, seriously, both of those teams look good. And it came down where Sterling City had controlled this one. We talked about in the preview that we thought that Sterling City was going to win. In my honest opinion, I thought Sterling City was going to win by about 2 or 3 touchdowns. And for a minute there, it looked like they were going to, but they allowed Borden County to creep back in. And even, like you said, Borden County had the lead. Sterling City, though, the not giving up. They didn't give up against May when they were down, and they didn't give up against Borden County, and scores that touchdown. And then they have the big defensive stop. You got it because they scored and they still had time on the clock. Borden County, that Kai Edwards kid, he's good. He is someone that, we'll probably see down the road. They're not in the same region as Sterling City, but, Borden County could challenge Rankin. And they already beat Rankin, but, when we get to playoffs, could see them maybe as a Sterling City, if everything goes as planned, makes it out of their region and ends up facing them for a state semifinal game. But, just overall, you look at what Sterling City has accomplished this season, and I think that it's hard to make an argument that the 5th-ranked team in the state isn't getting respect. But in my eyes, I feel like they kind of aren't getting the respect that they deserve. Westbrook's number 1, a team in their district, and they've played some good football teams, but Sterling City has mercy ruled the teams that they were supposed to mercy rule, and the 2 teams that were ranked in the top team that they played, or top 10 that they played, they beat.
Sterling City breaking up a pass in the end zone to kind of seal the win. This was everything that you want in a 6-man game. It was high pace, high scoring. There's defensive stops. Like I said, 8 lead changes. Sterling City at one point was up 48-28 near the end of the third quarter. Borden County climbed back, and then Francisco Gonzalez for Sterling City scored with 32 seconds left.
That guy's been awesome this year. Francisco Gonzalez has been great. Cross Knittle mentioned him. Chance Ferguson on such a big dude. In week 1, he was catching balls, but in the past few weeks, he's played a big role on defense, stepping up. I think one week he had 10 tackles and then 22 assisted tackles or something crazy. Like, maybe it wasn't 22, but it ended up being close to something about 22 total tackles or something for a 6-man game. They're flying around all over the place. It's hard to stop people on defense. He's done really well. Hudson Cox has done really well. The talk has been Sterling City's depth, but in reality, yes, the depth has mattered. But the guys that are returning for Sterling City, the guys that we saw last year, some of them being all-state selections, have really done a good job so far. And that's what makes Sterling City so dangerous, is that the kids that we expected to be good are good. And we'll see. I'm really high on Sterling City. I feel not just because they're an area team, but I think they proved it to you last night.
No, yeah, Sterling City. The 3 things that really stick out to me about this football program are, like you said, the depth, the veteran experience, and the execution. These Sterling City Eagles, they're not just athletic, they're smart kids.
Yeah, they are.
They're extremely smart kids. And we talk about what Sterling City has accomplished this season. They've played and beaten Garden City, who isn't a Garden City team that is.
They're figuring it out.
They're figuring it out. They beat Eden in week 4 last night. They beat a ranked May team, O'Donnell, who some people picked to upset Sterling
O'Donnell's
City.
not bad, but
not,
I mean, they're not the same caliber of Sterling City and some of these others in the top 10.
So that's Garden City, a ranked May team, O'Donnell, and then they beat a ranked Borden County team. And now they have another test against a 7th-ranked Happy team who's beating teams by an average of 40 points per game. But that brings us to this question. Jaydon, after this win over number 2 Borden County 62-58, where do you think this puts Sterling City in Monday's rankings?
I don't think they'll be number 1. I think they should be number 1. I made that point. Westbrook, while they've had the wins that they've had, they, played Water Valley last night, handedly beat Water Valley. It's also Water Valley's first game of the year. For a quarter, Water Valley was challenging Westbrook. Westbrook beat Lorraine, who, Coach Clint Lowry said is in Blackwell's district, said that they'll probably end up being, a team to look out for this year. I don't know. I think it'll be Westbrook probably stays at number 1, and I think Sterling City might get the hopeful, respect that is deserved to be number 2. I personally still think they should be number 1, but you got to look to it. Rankin was still ahead of Sterling City. They beat Lakey, and that was a crazy game also. They win 98-97.
Yeah.
It came down to a fumble recovery to end the game. So I don't know. To be honest with you, the way that the computer is set up to do this stuff with Dave Campbell's, I couldn't tell you how it is. It's something I'd like to ask Greg Tepper. I don't know. I'd like to see them number 1 though.
We'll see where Sterling City ends up in Monday's rankings. And for all those rankings, when they are released on Monday, head over to ConchoValleyHomepage.com. We try and get them up there as quick as possible. Sterling City, they're ranked number 5 right now. They're actually traveling to Borden County's home turf, Coyote Field, to play against 7th-ranked Happy. That one on September 25th at 7 p.m. We'll probably have more on that game in Week 5 of our preview cast on Wednesday as well. So go ahead. If you aren't already subscribed to our podcast feed, we're available on Apple Podcasts. That's the plug. We're available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and I believe Google as well, but do not hold me to that.
We're still figuring this thing out.
We're still figuring it out, but go ahead and subscribe to that podcast feed. Not only can you re-listen to these Saturday episodes where we have special guests and we recap, but we also put out preview episodes every Wednesday highlighting some of the biggest games in the Concho Valley. Some other scores from the 6-man game around the Concho Valley. You mentioned number 1 Westbrook. They beat Water Valley 56-8. Erie and County topping Grand Falls Royalty 52-6. Bront falling to Grady 50-19. Blackwell picking up the win 64-16. Lone and Olphin, they didn't play. I talked to Coach Tennyson this morning. They said Lone is dealing with some COVID-19 related issues, so they will get back in action. The Mustangs of Olphin.
They're going to make that game up.
They will be back in action next week against Santa Ana.
So did he say that they were going to play?
I don't believe so.
Man,
they are not making that game up.
Man,
like I mentioned,
brutal.
Garden City and Eden 77-54, and then you got Hermley over Robert Lee 55-8. So those are your 6-man scores. Another game we want to touch on. We're going to go ahead and jump back to Class 3A. Wall against Mason. Really solid rivalry to perennial powerhouses in our area. They improved to 3-1. They beat Mason 42-7. Mason, they fall to 0-4. But that 0-4, don't look too much past it. They've played some tough teams. Mason 0-4 for the first time since 1997. Jaydon, what were your thoughts on this one?
I think you put it pretty well there. Don't overlook Mason just because they're 0-4. I mean, Mason's still going to Mason can still win their district. I think once they get in there, they'll be, as the cliche goes, battle tested. But seriously, look at the teams that they've played. San Saba, who just lost a game last night against a good Llano team. This one, Wall, they lost last night against a Wall team who, if their only one loss is against San Antonio Cornerstone, who has D1 athletes and 6A kids pretty much playing 3A kids. Comanche has played really good football this season. Comfort has played good football season. It's not a matter of if win. I mean, Mason's just they're not the same football team that they've been. This isn't the 2018 team that goes undefeated and wins a state championship. Plain and simple. There's a lot of good teams in their region too that they'll have to get past to anyway just to do well in the playoffs. But I think overall you got to look at just Mason and say breathe a little bit. For Wall, good win. Continue doing what you're doing because the Hawks they took care of business like they should have. They should have beaten Mason by the score that they should have. I mean, I know I'm over here saying breathe a little bit with Mason, but Wall is that good of a football team where they're expected to go into playoffs and challenge Brock for that spot to go on to state semifinals, and that could end up being the team that wins the whole thing if you play Brock and get away with that. That's preview kind of stuff, and that's way down the road. But just looking at the fact that Wall was able to do wall hawk football, Dominic Garcia played well, Drew Morrison played well, the defense played well. That's just a vintage effort by the Wall Hawks.
And I know it's no excuse, but Mason also playing up a class in this matchup. Like you said, Wall was supposed to win, and they won. They outgained the Punchers 418 yards to 193. Dominic Garcia's and Drew Morrison, as you mentioned, both with 2 huge games. 14 carries, 160 yards, 3 touchdowns for Dominic Garcia. He reeled off a 72-yard touchdown in the third quarter, and that's where Wall really broke this thing open. They led 22-7 at the half. Wall came out in the third. Dominic Garcia reeled off a 72-yard touchdown run. Chase Rios ran a 53-yard touchdown run. And when you allow big plays like that, it's deflating, which is why they reeled off as many points in the second half as they did. I can't do math. I think it was, 20 points? They reeled off 20 unanswered points in the second half to win 42-7. Dominic Garcia, we mentioned Garrett Dixon's stat line. Let's throw Dominic Garcia's name in the hat for KLST Player of the Week as well. 14 carries for 160 and 3 touchdowns. Wall, they improve to 3-1. Any final things you want to touch on, Wall, before we move on?
Next week's game, obviously on the preview cast, but playing Millen Christian. Millen Christian hasn't played a game yet this year. That one is always good, and they haven't won in Midland. That's going to be a challenge for them. I'm excited to see what Houston Guy, what the product they put out, because it's getting close to district time, and I think that their district is down. Jim Ned's going to be probably their best test. So let's see how they do. One more before things start to get rolling.
Midland Christian, a team that always plays Wall extremely close as well. Tune into the Week 5 preview cast on Wednesday. We'll talk more about that. Lakeview, you mentioned at the top of the program, the top of the show, Lakeview, they dropped their second straight game, 36-12 to Snyder. The Chiefs are back at 500. They are 2-2. And Hunter Stewart, I keep bringing up this preview cast. 2 names we mentioned when talking about this game. Hunter Stewart and Caleb Smith for Snyder. We mentioned how Lakeview's run defense has struggled this season. They ran wild against the Chiefs. Both finished with over 100 yards on the ground. Smith scored 4 touchdowns. Stewart, not only did he have over 100 on the ground, but he also had over 100 through the air. And again, like you mentioned, the Chiefs, they were able to move the ball, but they just couldn't capitalize and turn that yardage into points.
Snyder clearly realized that Lakeview is struggling to stop the run. 48 carries, 361 yards. That's the third week in a row that this Lakeview defense has given up over 300 yards, and they'll figure it out, and that's why they play these games. Non-district is fun to talk about because it provides us with matchups that we wouldn't get to normally see, that are not just so regionally or localized. And I think that they're going to get it figured out, but that's a brutal way to keep losing football games. And against Pecos, they fought back, and the offense was there and showed up there. They showed up a little bit against Sweetwater last week, but Sweetwater is just they're a good football team. Sweetwater's, I think, someone that's right there in that top 25 in the classification. Yeah,
Sweetwater, they beat the 7th-ranked team in the state as well last night.
Yeah.
So, no joke for Sweetwater. You got to think that teams are starting to keen in and realize the weakness of this Lakeview defense.
Yeah, and I think offensively, if you look at really what Lakeview is, it's a pass-first team. Albert Rodriguez is capable of throwing the ball far down the field. The kid has an arm, and he's got 3 receivers that you can really say that, like Brandon Herrera, Austin Bandy, who has been the top guy for him, and Tristan Franklin. They've been good weapons this year, and I think Snyder just did a good job of knowing what to expect. They played I wouldn't say that Coach Guevara got out coached. That'd be I don't know because I wasn't there, but I'm just looking at what it is that they did. I feel like Lakeview was just fell trapped to Snyder's game plan, and Snyder game planned for them really well.
Yeah, 4th straight game, Albert Rodriguez for Lakeview throwing for over 300 yards. He also had a touchdown. Josh Torres, the junior running back for the Chiefs, he also finished with 107 yards and a touchdown. Lakeview, up next for them, they're going to take on a winless Brownfield team. They're 0-3. Lakeview, they're opening up as 12-point favorites. That one at Cub Stadium at 7.
That one's here, actually. It got moved. I think it got moved. So
good.
Originally Lakeview would have played Fabens here on a Thursday. I think that they somehow swapped those games. Last night when I checked on the SAISD website, they had it flipped where Brownfield is coming here, and then Lakeview is going to get shipped out, and they'll go to Fabens to play that football game the following week. And then Hereford will wrap up non-district for them. So they still got 3 more before they get into the thick of things. And this is a winnable game against Brownfield. They lost to Brownfield last season on the road, but Big Spring, the team in Lakeview's district beat them last night by 3. And this could be kind of the thing that we can measure Big Spring and Lakeview with, I guess, because I think if you really look at Lakeview's district, Andrews is the team to beat, but the 3, Fort Stockton, Lakeview, and Big Spring, I think it's kind of a toss-up. And I think, we'll just see. A lot could be who's healthy going into that, who's kind of hot coming into it, who's figured out their team strengths and stuff like that. Another
interesting week ahead for the Lakeview Chiefs, and it was a great week 4 of the high school football season. Rounding out our scores, Christoval, they put up 30-plus in the first quarter against Roscoe. They beat the Plowboys 64-6. Ozona, they blank the still winless Menard 46-0, and then Miles really starting to pick things up here in week 4. They down Monday 20-6. So yeah, a very interesting week 4. Gives us a lot to talk about in week 5, especially on our Week 5 preview cast that we put out every Wednesday. Go ahead and subscribe to that podcast feed as well so you can get those notifications.
I think, I guess just kind of to wrap up the week, we didn't really hit on El Dorado and Wink much. I guess I'm disappointed that El Dorado, they were up at halftime, and it looked like, ooh, okay, El Dorado's about to be the ones that do this. I think El Dorado is still putting it together, man. They Coach Long is getting everything figured out, but they have the talent, clearly have the talent to compete with some good teams. Wink's the 5th-ranked team in their classification, beat Christoval already. I mean, they end up beating Wink or El Dorado last night, but I mean, El Dorado's going to figure it out at some point, and it might be, right when they kind of get into district and that Christoval game rolls around. It's not the last game of the season this year. They play in week 9, so and that could be the telling game for the district championship again. So I don't think it's too early to give up on teams, and especially when they're not even in district and these games don't count. But it's just a little disappointed El Dorado, because I thought that was going to be a statement win for that team. Another one, you talk about Christoval, that Cougars really needed to have just a good offensive night, and they put 39 up in the first quarter. And I said Braden Wilcox, but they've got some other guys that deserve some credit. Bo Jolly has been playing good at receiver. Josh Fava has been good at running back for them. So, they kind of got rolling offensively like they needed to, and they'll have some more opportunities to do that. But it was good to see them kind of do what I thought they were going to do coming into the season. And of course, good on Miles snapping that 2-game losing streak to start the season. Now they've won 2 games in a row. Coach Wilhelm and the Bulldogs probably obviously happy about that, and they're probably getting into a bit of a rhythm now, and that's something that you can't overlook them as well.
And let's not forget the other team in that district. I don't think I mentioned their score. Junction over Heiko, 39-10. So a lot to talk about for week 5 ahead. Again, if you want to go ahead and rewatch all of those highlight videos, you can go over to ConchoValleyHomepage.com. If you're more of a visual person, we also have a Concho Valley High School football scoreboard that you can look at on the website as well.
I can't look at the camera this week because I'm just looking at a monitor of your floating head, and it's really tripping me
and arms,
out.
look at that.
Yeah.
That is awesome. Anyways.
We should just do this for the rest of the year. Just floating heads and arms. And maybe some helmets. We'll just start putting green all over the helmet, so it's just the logos.
Ryan, the floating head. That pretty much wraps up today's episode of Locker Room Rewind. Week 4 of the high school football season was great. Week 5 could be even better, so stay tuned for our preview cast on Wednesday. We'll be back again after all the action unfolds right here on Saturday at 2 p.m. So go ahead and subscribe to that podcast feed. This is Locker Room Rewind. I'm Ryan Reynolds. That is the fabulous KSAN's very own Jaydon Hart. We'll be back on Wednesday.